Content warning. This podcast episode contains discussions of a sensitive nature that may be triggering for some individuals.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast in partnership with Kidney Care UK, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.
Hi, and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. My name is Dee Moore, and I am a kidney warrior. This podcast is dedicated to encourage, educate, and inspire as we explore all aspects of kidney disease, related chronic illnesses, and health. In today's episode, I am bringing you a kidney warrior story. Now, there's always something you can learn from someone's story, something that can bring inspiration and hope. My guest today is kidney health podcaster Christy Miller. Christy's journey through unexpected health challenges has transformed her into a passionate advocate and voice for the kidney community. Her story is one of strength, resilience, and purpose, offering insight and encouragement for anyone affected by chronic illness. Stay tuned. This is an episode you won't want to miss. Hi, and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. How are you doing today, Christy?
I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to the podcast. Everyone knows what I'm going to say because I say it every time, but I do sincerely mean it when I say I love recording Kidney Warrior story interviews because why? There's so much you can learn from someone's lived experience of CKD. So everyone knows how excited I am to record Kidney Warrior stories. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your story today, Christy.
It's not the happiest. It's a bit sad and miserable at the beginning, but I think it's got a happy ending. So I hope you're ready for that.
We are. We're definitely ready. So without further ado, I'm going to ask my first question. And my first question is, how did your kidney warrior journey begin and how were you diagnosed?
Well, 2006, so a long time ago now, or at least it feels like that. I was 21. I was a student living my best life. Just finished my degree, lots of parties, lots of drinking, lots of dancing. It was brilliant. And it was the bank holiday weekend in 2006, the May bank holiday weekend. I wasn't feeling very well. And me and my then boyfriend were going to the races, but I was that poorly on the train that we had to come home. And I couldn't move. All I could do was sit in the bath with water pouring on my head from the shower and hot water in the bath. That was the only thing that would stop this pain that I was having. And it was all over the news at the time to not come to A&E. Don't come to A&E, we're overwhelmed. Don't come to A&E. Everyone's ridiculous, you know. Everyone's coming in with ridiculous things. Please don't come to A&E. So we ran the out of hours and they were quite dismissive. But we ended up seeing a doctor on, I want to say, the Friday night, maybe, can't remember. A long time ago, like I said. And he said, oh, you've got gastroenteritis, here's an anti-sickness tablet, go home. By the bank holiday Monday, I was in so much pain that we just had to go to A&E. Didn't have a choice. And that's really where my memories finish of that. Unfortunately, it's very fuzzy. I basically woke up 6 weeks later. They rushed me into surgery. This is second-hand accounts now because I can't remember. They'd rushed me into surgery, opened me up and been like, oh my Lord, what's going on here? And my appendix had popped. And it had basically poisoned everything. It was septicemia, peritonitis. It had damaged my bowels, obviously my kidneys. And when I woke up, didn't know where I was, who I was, how old I was, how long I'd been asleep. And I had a colostomy, a trachea, and I had a fistula, a neckline, and I was on dialysis, which at the very beginning was the least of my concerns that I was on dialysis. It wouldn't have been immediately, obviously, but when they told me my kidneys had failed, they promised me they'd start working again. Oh, your kidneys are really resilient. They'll start again. This is just an AKI from all the poison. They'll recover. And obviously, 20 years down the line, they still haven't. So I don't know if that's a diagnosis of CKD, really, or it just kind of happened to me. But I remember my kidney doctors, they were fabulous. They were very nice people. But again, they promised me they'd start working again, and obviously they didn't. And that was quite heartbreaking as a 21-year-old who thought, oh, I'll get over this, it'll be fine. No.
So from a completely normal life, studying, enjoying being a student, to what would seem overnight, everything changing, going through all of that, being in a coma, multi-organ failure, everything that you went through, and then being told, oh, your kidneys, they're going to recover, but then not recovering. Like, how did you get your mind around all of that?
Well, like I said, at the beginning, I was so unwell. I didn't have time to think about my kidneys, really. I'd lost half my body weight and couldn't move, couldn't walk. I spent 6 months in hospital at that time. When I finally got home, the reality sort of started to hit, because we had to go to and from the hospital for the dialysis treatment, and realising that this is now forever unless I get a kidney is hard. Especially I was so poorly. My colostomy was so hard to manage. And the dialysis was complicated at the beginning because of my colostomy. It made it complicated. They had to put fluid on me rather than take fluid off. So it made it all very complicated. And then having a fistula. And then I think my fistula failed within 6 months. And then it was neckline after neckline. And you know yourself, that surgery's that's not the worst surgery you can have, but it's not pleasant having a neckline put in or taken out. And I couldn't look after myself at the beginning because I was so ill. So my dad took early retirement so he could drive me to and from. But we studied in Liverpool, so we were at the Liverpool hospital. But then once we'd finished studying, you get kicked out of student accommodation. I had to move back home, which was in Ellesmere Port. So the drive every time through the tunnels, half an hour, paying for the tunnels, which we didn't have to do, but nobody told us that at the time. Didn't find out for years after that we could have claimed all that money back. So my dad took early retirement to drive me to and from dialysis. It affected everybody, not just me. Affected my mum and dad, obviously. My boyfriend, my mum and dad said, oh, move in with us, which was like, oh my God, you're letting him move in with us? What are you doing? But he moved in with us. My sister was only young, so she was going through her A-levels, so affected her. There was a few times where my trachea bled into my lungs and I went without oxygen, and they'd ring my mum and dad and say, oh, you need to come in and say goodbye now. And then I was okay. And luckily, obviously, because I'm still here talking to you, but it wasn't a very pleasant, at least the first year, it was very unpleasant. And then getting used to the dialysis, as I was only a kid. It was hard. I definitely lost my 20s anyway.
I hope you don't mind me asking this question, but as a patient with both a colostomy bag and also a line for dialysis, how was it managing both?
That time, back then, the nurses managed my line rather than me. They changed the dressings, they kept it clean. And we dealt with my colostomy at home, which was entertaining, shall we say. They've come quite a long way since I had that first one in terms of the, I don't know if you'd call it equipment, but even the bags have changed. We used to have to pace like this disgustingly thick glue to stick my bags to my stomach. And it was so difficult. And like I said, I did have a fistula for a while, so they must have took the line out at some point. And then it was probably late in 2007. They rang me to say they were going to reverse this colostomy. And that's when I had my one and only panic attack. I've never had a panic attack before or since. I had a panic attack then when they rang me to tell me that. Couldn't breathe, had to give the phone to Steve, and it was awful. But they said, right, we're going to get rid of the colostomy. I wouldn't recommend that surgery. No. It's the worst surgery I've ever had. But I understand with the neckline and the colostomy, you'd think contamination or trying to keep everything clean all the time. But I never came across any problems with that. I suppose a neckline and near my collarbone colostomy was lower tummy. So no, never. Showering was a problem. That was a problem. Luckily, my mum worked in a private hospital and she managed to get me a thing that lifted you into the bath so I could have showers and things. But no, it never, like I said, the nurses looked after my neckline at that point and we did my colostomy. So there was never any risk, I would say, of them being contaminating each other. And I know necklines are renowned for getting infections and things like that. But I don't remember ever getting one with that first one. I think they whipped it out as quick as they could as soon as my fistula was going, even though that packed up eventually. And then by the time they probably put another one in, I probably didn't have my colostomy there.
So at what point did it become clear that your kidneys were not going to recover?
Well, that Christmas, my heart failed as well. So I was back in the hospital with heart failure. So I think they thought I was a goner then. But by that point, I was on regular dialysis. They never came and said to me, oh, by the way, we think they're not going to come back now. They never came and said that to me. I just suddenly was in the system and was the little baby on the dialysis ward with all the old men. And I had a nephrologist and I had appointments. And as I was getting weller, it was becoming more obvious that this was my life now. And I survived the heart failure. And then it slowly became normal for me. Became my normal was hiking over to Liverpool every time for dialysis, which was quite hard. And then eventually I started using transport, which is even more difficult, especially when you're going all that way, so that they'd pick you up stupidly early, so you'd be in the back of an ambulance for hours. But that was my life then. Yeah, at 22, 23, that was my normal. At least they'd got rid of the colostomy is all I can say. Got rid of that one. We'll come on to that. But yeah, CKD was my normal.
What helped you come to terms with the fact that your kidneys were not going to recover and that this was your new life?
I am very lucky in that I've got a very supportive family. My boyfriend from the very beginning stuck by me this whole time. We are married now, but my family were very supportive, stayed by my side the whole time, every appointment. They came with me to dialysis for years. I began looking online and things for support groups, and I started volunteering for a kidney charity. And that helped, and I started blogging in the early days. I was always a keen writer, and I started blogging for this charity. And my boyfriend did a few charity days and things like that. Did a charity run, and it was nice to see that I wasn't on my own. I mean, I was quite young. Everybody else on my unit was elderly, but I was still on the midday dialysis shifts where they tend to keep the more unwell people because there's doctors there available. But I made friends with all my roommates and they were lovely, lovely people who I've all lost since, unfortunately. But I don't know if I've ever come to terms with it. Can you come to terms with it? I accept it now, I suppose. It's just part of who I am now. It's been nearly half my life, which horrifies me. It has. It's been, I think it's 20 years next year. So that's nearly half my life. I've been doing this. So it's just, It's who I am now. And like you, if I can help people by telling my story, that's what I like to do.
What advice do you have for a young person that has been newly diagnosed with CKD?
Oh, that's so difficult. It is a roller coaster. There are definitely lots of low points, but there is high points as well. You'll be okay, which is terrible advice. It is terrible advice, but you will be okay. Read around the subject. Teach yourself to be your own advocate with doctors, especially doctors, nurses, everyone, so that you need to know your condition better than anybody. Like, so you can be your own advocate then. I'd always advocate for being your own advocate. It's the best way to look after yourself. And I didn't do that at the beginning. And I wish I had. And mistakes were made throughout my 20 years, which wouldn't have happened if I'd have advocated for myself more. And they're scared of me now, the doctors, as I'm sure they are of you. They see you coming and, oh no, it's that person that knows everything about their own condition. But that's the best way.
So they removed the colostomy bag and you were continuing with dialysis. So what happens next?
What happens next is I have my boyfriend's kidney. Amazingly, he was tested and was all given the go-ahead. We did delay it a year and went and did our master's degrees in Newcastle. So we spent probably 9 months in Newcastle doing our master's degree. But when I went, I was in a wheelchair, and by the time we left, I was walking. So it's probably a good physio exercise. Hardest thing I've ever done, though, is doing a master's when I'm on dialysis. I won't ever be doing that again. What an awful, awful thing. But when we came back, basically the transplant went ahead. It was delayed a few times, as it often happens with live transplants. But unfortunately, the surgery failed. So I woke up in the same position, just with a huge scar. And Steve woke up with one less kidney. And the only reason they could give us was, there was a technical fault. We didn't find out for years what that meant, because it was all hidden in the jargon in my notes. And like, there was a few articles written where they'd written, oh, she rejected his kidney. And I didn't like that at all, because no, you're making it sound like I've rejected him, which is not what happened. The kidney didn't even barely make it into me. Turns out they tore one of my arteries, and without them knowing, there's a little flap inside. So the blood wouldn't perfuse the kidney. They couldn't make it perfuse the kidney, and they didn't understand why. So after however many hours, it had to go in the bin. My potassium was too high. The kidney had to go in the bin. And we wake up and nothing had happened. And as you can imagine, I was not the happiest of patients. And I never saw my transplant doctor again after that. He came to see me. I yelled at him. And I never saw him again, because he immediately struck me off his list and gave me to somebody else. And then he died. So we never even got to talk about it. But me and Steve were obviously devastated. Everybody's devastated. I'm still on dialysis. What else could we do other than just carry on as we were? And then that year is when they put this dialysis graft in that I've still got to this day. We can talk about it now. For a long time, we couldn't talk about it without getting upset. But it's so long ago now. 2009, it feels such a long time ago. And a lot's happened since then, obviously. And he was very upset. He refused to stay in the hospital. He went home after a day. So then my mum had to look after him because he couldn't do anything. But then then I was obviously in, because I'd been opened up, and obviously nothing had happened, but I'd been opened up. So there's a scar that I've got for no reason. But yeah, it was a very difficult time for us. I'm very anti, or at the time I was, I'm not so much these days. Back then I was very anti-counselling. I don't need help. I'm fine. But even I went to a counsellor back then, because that was just so difficult. But we got married the next year, so I've not been able to get rid of him since. It was even mentioned in the speeches. So it's like, oh, he gave her a kidney. She had to marry him, Very brave of him. But they keep an eye on his kidney, obviously, to this day. It's not always great, and it scares me when his levels aren't good. But yeah, live transplants are the way to go. But honestly, when they don't work, it's not the best feeling.
What advice do you have to someone who, for whatever reason, their transplant hasn't been successful, to help them begin to come to terms with it?
Oh, I've spoken to friends who've been through failed transplants. It's so difficult because your hopes are raised so high, and then they're smashed. Basically, all your hopes are smashed down. I know it's boring and it's not an exciting phrase or anything. It's just like, just keep going. You have to keep going. They can do it again. They can. Where they destroyed my artery, that's where they want to put my next kidney. So they can go again. Things heal. Your body heals. Hopefully your mind heals. If not, get help with that, obviously. But there's the physical toll of it, of being opened up and then nothing happening. But then I think it takes an emotional toll on you, and it does. It's hard to come back from the devastation of it, but you have to. And I know going back on dialysis, especially those first few sessions, is just, and everyone's asking you questions. It's just awful. I remember it, and it is awful. But you just have to keep going. You have to keep slogging through it, because life is worth living. There are things worth living for, and I would hope everybody's got things worth living for. And you've just got to keep going. Like, you'll know the phrase, don't let dialysis rule your life. And they say, look for the glimmers, don't they? And genuinely, that's how I get through these days, is I look for the happy moments. And I book in the happy moments. I'm booking coffee next week or whatever with a friend. And that'll keep me going through the next week, because I'm going for coffee next week with a friend. Once you pass the physical pain and you're out of hospital and your body's back to normal, you'll never forget. It will lessen over time. I don't know. I suppose everybody's different, how you get over it. I was once called into my unit to speak to a chap who was refusing to go on to dialysis because he'd been in for a transplant and it not worked. And he didn't want to go on to dialysis. And he was a friend. That's why I got called in, because he was one of my friends, one of the younger people. And it was like, you have to. You know you have to, because you can't just not have dialysis. That's not an option. You got yourself here, which means you need to have it. So please go and have it. We'll get through it together. And I know it's much gentler when you've got a good support network. And I know not everybody has that, but it is when you've got people to talk to. But me and my husband, we went and had counselling separately. And we still have counselling separately to this day. But I don't know, he might moan about me for the whole session, every session, I've no idea. But I've only recently started going back to see someone, and we haven't even got to the failed transplant yet. Haven't even got that far. But yeah, me personally, I was having nightmares. So my aim of going to a counsellor in the beginning was to stop the dreams, because I was seeing the surgeon and my mum coming in to see Steve with his little happy face to tell him that it hadn't worked. But I kept seeing that in my head, even though I wasn't there. I was like, I need to stop that. I need it out. I need it gone. And it did.
Following the failure of the kidney transplant, you were back to dialysis and dialysis life. What happened next?
Yes, I did another approximately 5 years on dialysis then. And then in the September 2014, it was my second call, but I got the call and went in and had my bloods and waiting around. It was a marginal kidney, so it wasn't, premium, top-notch, young, healthy kidney. It had come all the way from London and it was in its 60s. But they reckoned it was a good one for me. So I took it and I had my kidney transplant surgery, which is always fun. Another surgery. Obviously on the other side, to the side, they tried to put Steve's kidney in. Recovered from that. Okay, I was in hospital for a couple of weeks, had to have a huge dose of steroids to give it a kick in because it had been out the original body for so long. It was very sleepy. It took those 2 weeks to wake up. So a huge dose of steroids helped it. And that was Betty kidney, even though it's from a man. For some reason, we named it Betty after one of the patients that I'd known and lost. Yeah, Betty kidney. That was a fun surgery, like I said. Recovered from that. And then that was in the September. And then in the December, wasn't very well. Was not feeling very well at all. Kidney doctor's not overly concerned. Here's where I should have advocated for myself more again and didn't. And then, yeah, there we go. Christy's bowels popped again. Another colostomy. Yeah, just in time for New Year 2015. Yeah. I think it was January, like the 2nd. I had emergency bowel surgery and had to have another colostomy put in. I'd had a really bad reaction to one of the immunosuppressive medications, which I won't name because I know loads of people take it. I'll just scare everybody. But I had a really bad reaction to it. So yeah, had another colostomy, which we all know I love and enjoy. But at least this time, I was well enough to manage it myself. I could change it all myself. I could look after it myself. But all the while, not bothered at all, was my little Betty kidney. Didn't give a stuff that my bowels had exploded. She just carried on, which is good. Couldn't be doing with that going off on one at the same time. But yeah, so I had another stoma and they refused to reverse it at first. And they're like, oh, are you sure you don't want to keep this? I'm like, no. You're like, it's very dangerous. So I don't care. In my 20s, I think I know everything, don't I? And I probably had that, nearly a year, and they got rid of it. Now, that was a horrendous surgery. I would have 10 kidney transplants before I'd have another colostomy reversal. Absolutely dreadful. But I had that again, and that was a terrible recovery. Absolutely terrible. But my kidney carried on.
Wow. I mean, you really are the definition of a kidney warrior. I mean, you have overcome so many challenges along your journey to have gone through a coma, your bowels bursting more than once, having to deal with dialysis, long distance, the failure of a kidney transplant. I mean, you've been through so much. How do you do it?
Well, I know as soon as my transplant was stable, we went on a round the world trip. So we made the most of that. Obviously, they're always testing you, blood tests constantly. How do I do it? I don't know. I would never consider myself a strong person, even. Or before all this happened, I would never have thought of myself as a resilient person. I think I'm stubborn. I think that helps. I get that from my dad. I think I'm just stubborn. I'm too stubborn to die. And when I'm well, I make the most of it. Betty kidney did me nearly 10 years. I mean, there was a few points where she tried to let me down, but we made the most of it. We went on loads of trips, loads of lovely trips all over the world. Yeah, I think making the most of it when I'm well is how I do it. And I look forward to the nice things. And unfortunately, my kidney's now failed again. And I had to restart dialysis last year. But again, I'm looking forward. I'm trying to look forward anyway to the fabulous holidays we'll have if I get another kidney. And I think, like I said, some of me must be strong, but I think stubbornness is the main part for me, probably, as I'm just too stubborn to let it get the better of me.
Rewinding slightly, you mentioned earlier about people advocating for themselves. Now, everybody who listens to the podcast knows that this is something that I feel very strongly about. But in your words and in your mind, what does it mean to advocate for yourself as a kidney patient?
Knowing your illness, knowing yourself and your body, when you go to see a clinician, knowing what you want from them, being polite, of course, because I'm always polite, and telling them what you want and getting what you want from them, basically. First and foremost, know your illness, know your body and what you need or want from whoever you're speaking to, I would say, because nobody knows your body like you. And they like to think, I say they, doctors like to think they know everything, and they don't. My GP knows nothing about kidney disease. He thought I could get up and walk around with my dialysis machine. Yeah, exactly. That was a fun conversation. So they don't know everything, and they don't need to know everything, and you can't expect them to know everything, but you need to know everything about you so that you can tell them, so that you are medically treated right.
So now that you're back on dialysis, how is life on dialysis second time round?
It took me a lot longer to get used to it than I thought it would. I heard a few things from other patients say, "Oh, you'll be used to it again in a few months." Honestly, it took me 6 months to get used to it again. We're now in a routine. I see the same staff. I see the same patients. It's back to the grind, I suppose. It's a bit like a part-time job, isn't it? It's not very exciting. It's just something you have to do. But yeah, I'm feeling a bit better as time goes on. I've had other conditions diagnosed in the meantime. You do not want to hear about them. I can't drive anymore is the long and short of it. So I've lost a little bit of my independence, which makes me a bit sad. But that's what Ubers are for. But it's okay.
There are other companies that
There are
provide
other companies that offers them taxis.
provide taxi services.
Yeah. But yeah, it's back to the grind. It's exhausting. It's drying my skin out. I put loads of weight on because I'm on loads of steroids. It's all the same rubbish. I miss being able to drink a pint of cider when it's really hot. But it's okay. I'm still the youngest on the unit though. Even now I'm 40, I'm still the youngest on the unit somehow. Not sure how, but somehow. Though I have spotted a few little young ones, and now it makes me feel sad for them. And I go, oh no. Then I feel like I'm reacting like my nan would. Just everything to make me feel old.
What are your top tips for someone starting on hemodialysis?
You're probably going to be sat there for at least 4 hours. Take some form of entertainment. I personally can't sleep on dialysis, so I have to take something I can watch TV on. Take a blanket. You can use hospital blankets, of course. I take my own now. Nobody cares what you're wearing, so wear something comfy. And it's rubbish, but try and relax. It makes it easier. If you're having needles stuck in, it makes it easier if you're relaxed. If you're on a neckline, probably makes the blood flow better if you're relaxed as well. Just, get through it.
So I know that you're very active on social media and you have your very own kidney health podcast called Chronically Christy. Tell the listeners about your podcast and where they can take a listen and support.
I do indeed. I started this Chronically Christy podcast last year on World Kidney Day, and I had no idea if I'd actually managed to keep it up and continue it, but somehow I have. And I've had support from the patients I know and the staff I see, and you, of course, and keeping the guests going. And it can be found in all the usual places. I have my own website. And it's all over my Instagram, which is Chronically Christy. And it's in all the usual places that you can listen to your podcasts. It's on Spotify and Apple and all the other ones that my server puts it onto. I share it, obviously, every time a new one's released. A new one comes out every couple of weeks, unless I'm in hospital. And then I have a little delay, obviously. And luckily, that's not happened for a while now. Like I said, I started on World Kidney Day with no idea if I would keep going. And it's been a year and a half now, I think. And it's nice connecting with other people in a different way. And I like helping people. I like sharing stories and hearing stories. And we've had all sorts of different patients come on, not just kidney patients. And I have a very good relationship with the local kidney dietitian. And everybody loves her episodes. So I'll have to get her back on again soon. But yeah, you can find it in all the usual spots. Or ask Alexa to play Chronically Christy and see what happens.
Please do give Christy a follow on Instagram and do support Chronically Christy Podcast. So today you've shared your Kidney Warrior story. You've shared your challenges, what you've overcome, what you've learned through this journey, and also advice throughout the interview. But before we finish this interview, I've got one final question, and that is, what is your final word of encouragement for the listeners?
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. And if you've never listened to that, where have you been?
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for all the advice that you've shared. And I have to say that final piece of advice definitely is the most unique that's been shared on the podcast so far. But thank you so much. I know this will help so many people. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. I truly appreciate your support. New episodes of this podcast are released every other Monday, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you found this episode helpful, why not share it with someone who might benefit too? To stay up to date with the latest episodes, news and resources, sign up for the email mailing list and join the WhatsApp channel. All the details are in the episode description. Until next time, take care and choose to live.